Humidity. Yeah. Humid as bejeezers out there right now.
Today's bad.
It's bad.
And all your wood is swelled up.
Well, that's what I want to get to. Okay, because you don't think about how the change in weather impacts flooring and wood going into houses. Some people have wood on their ceilings. Some people have wood on their walls. Some people have wood on their floor, ceilings, and walls.
And walls, yeah, sure.
How does this wacky change of temperature? A month ago, we were walking around in winter jackets. Yep. Okay, in May. Okay, it was raining sideways.
Literally a month ago.
No,
isn't that something?
I went to the Sox game on a Friday night. It froze my rear end off. It was raining.
40 degrees, yeah.
It was 40 degrees.
Right.
Got into the broadcast booth, and I told the guys from California, okay, I'm done with this. It was the second inning. You saw Comiskey. I'm not going to say, I'm like, you saw where the Sox played. Yep. Boom, we're going back to Oak Brook to your hotel. I'm done with this, right? Yep. So how do you, as a business owner that works with a very important material, wood, adjust to the change in the humidity levels? Because it could really, I had hardwood floors in my condo at 2800 Lakeshore Drive. Yeah. And they came home. They came over, had a leak. They had to tear it out. They came over, dropped the wood, old school style, dropped the wood. They let it sit there for a week to 10 days, let it get acclimated, and then put it in. Problem is, I had soft spots throughout my entire condo.
Right.
So how do you eliminate this is where that acclimation room comes into play, I would think.
We've talked about it before on the show, Dave. So, Chicago is a very, very difficult sort of climate to acclimate materials, right? We go through these massive swings of temperature, humidity. As you just mentioned, a month ago it was 40 degrees. I think it's going to be 101 today.
Great.
So high heat, high humidity. So these fluctuations really, cause major problems for all building materials, but specifically anything that's fibrous and specifically wood. So we work with a lot of wood flooring. So for us, acclimation is critical. And the way we sort of mitigate that is we actually have in our facility in essence, a large humidor where we keep all of our flooring in stasis year-round. And what that simply means is we maintain a very specific, very tight range of temperature and humidity so that our wood is always acclimated to the season, to the environment into which it's going to be installed.
So it's ready to go then,
and it's ready to go, right. So Dave just mentioned that, somebody had to come into his house, drop off the wood. Okay, is anybody monitoring that wood? Do we know where the wood came from? No. Do we know what the relative humidity in your home is to which that wood is acclimating to? No, right? So we actually do all of that in-house. We then send our production team to your home to take environmental readings. And what they'll do is they'll take temperature, humidity, moisture content of the concrete, the subfloor, whatever the case might be. And then once we deem the site ready for installation, we then bring our already acclimated material into the home and it's ready for installation right away. We're not having to inconvenience you having this load of wood sitting in your living room for a week.
When I had mine done 25 years ago, first time, they brought all the wood in like a week before. I go, why? He goes, it's got to get acclimated to the temperature.
Right, but did he ever use a moisture meter? Did he ever?
When I did my basement 10 years ago, he did. He checked the concrete floor before.
That's good.
Yeah, he did. He checked every whole area, which is...
And what happens? What happens to the wood if they don't do these steps?
All right. So wood is hygroscopic. Okay, it's a fancy word for basically letting us know that wood will release moisture and it'll absorb moisture. Okay. So if you take a piece of wood and you stick it in a bucket of water, what's it going to do?
It's going to absorb.
It's going to absorb. It's going to swell. So it doesn't necessarily need liquid water to do that. It can absorb all of that excess moisture right out of the air if it's a hot and humid environment in your home.
Is it a difference if the people say that people don't have air conditioning or they just use natural air? Is there a difference in the wood?
Absolutely.
People with air conditioning have a pretty much climate controlled house, So you got to look at that too, right?
100%. So environmental controls are critical. So before our wood floor goes in, we're discussing environmental controls with all of our clients. Before we leave the home, we're discussing post-installation environmental controls. What should you do to your home to make sure that your floor is going to behave correctly? So because wood is hygroscopic, we need to maintain as stable as we can in Chicago with these wild swings of temperature and humidity. We need to maintain a stable relative humidity and temperature environment in your home. So for example, you are going to go, you're a snowbird, you're going to take off in November, you're not coming back until, April, May, whatever the case might be. You turn your heat down to 50 degrees in your home because you don't want to, what's the point, right? So what happens in that case is, 50 degrees, it's very, very cold. Your floor is now exposed to that cold environment. It starts to move. It starts to want to acclimate itself to that environment. Same thing in summer. You're not here for a month. You've gone on vacation. You turn the air up to 78, 79 degrees, 80 degrees. What happens? Relative humidity then climbs. Your floor absorbs all that excess moisture, starts to warp. Right, so it's very, very important.
Right, and then you have a bigger problem. It starts buckling, then you got to rip it out.
Exactly. So we actually we educate our clients. We talk about environmental controls all the time. We do what we can internally on our end to get the floor to the point where we've got it stable, we've got it installed correctly, and then we just sort of hand it over to you. But if you don't maintain those environmental controls, what happens is, bad things happen. That's basically what what we're concerned with.
With concrete, with the humidity too, concrete sets up slower, and it's when there's a lot of moisture in the air. The sunlight will make it dry faster when you're pouring it, but the humidity keeps the moisture in it, and humidity is a good thing when we're pouring.
You got a double-edged sword on a day like today. It's blazing hot, high humidity.
Right.
So you've got a math equation that you also, just like Igor's got a math equation.
Right.
Gary just has to drink water. That's fine. Okay.
But let's say we're pouring
I have to sell that house once they put it in.
Say we're pouring a patio in the backyard and it's half covered in shade and the other half's in the sun.
You've got to figure all that out.
You're jumping on the sun portion before the other sets up. But you're fighting two ends because it's half's in the shade, half's in the sun.
Sure.
And the stuff in the sun is setting up way faster than it, and you got to work with it.
How many guys that you work with prior to working with Igor had these acclimation rooms?
So for sure, none.
You're the first I heard of it. That's pretty impressive.
All right. The other thing is, Igor, once it's finished and varnished, it controls, it doesn't absorb that much. So you stabilize it with the seal, right?
We stabilize it with the polyurethanes, Joe, but it still will absorb that excess moisture.
I understand. Yeah. All I'm saying is that because you're installing it at the proper humidity, if you will, everything you do is tight and where it's supposed to be. I like the word stabilized. It works. All right. But once it's sealed, I know you're saying, hey, you could still buckle my floor.
Right.
But it doesn't buckle like somebody else's floor would that wasn't acclimated properly.
So that's exactly it. So, for example, new construction is notorious for this.
Yes.
Right? And so new construction guys really, those GCs really don't like us very much because we're constantly putting the brakes on their project.
Yes.
They'll call us up and say, we're ready for flooring. Well, we're going to go out there and we're going to take a moisture content reading of that subfloor. And maybe the windows aren't in, maybe there's water in the basement. Yeah. There's no way they're ready for flooring, and we're going to stop that job. We're not going to put our flooring in because it's not ready for it. Because had we put the flooring in...
Well, explain to the listeners, because condo, it's typically you're doing 10, 50 to 100 units at a time,
right?
And they want you to come in with a gigantic truck and hit them all at once.
Right.
So you're not... I mean, you could do that, but you're not going to do it until
the site is ready for us, right? Because if we put the flooring in prematurely, what happens is that floor is going to want to absorb excess moisture, or it's going to release its own moisture. If it's, let's say, in the dead of winter, it's -20 outside, there's no environmental controls in the home, and they're ready for us to do flooring. It's not going to work well.
So what I learned from you also is that if we just finish drywalling with our taping compound and everything, we just raise the relative humidity in that room.
That's right.
All right.
And we're going to wait for that to actually come back down.
Yes.
And in some cases, if you really want to expedite, we'll ask you to put in a dehumidifier, Joe, to run that dehumidification to bring that moisture down a little quicker, because our staff is on site with all kinds of gadgetry, measuring relative humidity, moisture content, and thermohygrometers and the whole 9 yards, making sure that that site is ready for us. And if it's not, we're not gonna start.